Welcome to Trek Trav. I'm Trav, and this is your Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 4 review. We are going to... It's a bit late this week, so if you make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, I'll be back on Thursday with your regular review. So let's get into this episode. There will be spoilers. The opening scene with Picard in the restaurant, I'm like, oh my god, not another 5-year time gap. It was really sort of like, what the hell is going on? And then I was like, okay, just leave it, it's fine. And then we get the resolution to the Picard-Riker thing from the last episode where Riker kicks Picard off the bridge. And it's like, oh no, I'm sorry. And then they get over it and...
You were right before.
It did feel to me a little bit like forced drama. Like, oh, we need a stingy beat so people come back and see what the outcome is. I get why it was there, but it wasn't really needed. I really didn't feel like it was, I don't know, it just felt a bit too quickly brushed under the carpet. Found out the ship's bleeding to death, so it's getting less and less power, and they got to sing, so there's a lot of melancholy in this episode. My question is like, where are the lights? Like, I know that they're running out of power, but the whole season, even when they had power, no lights. And we keep hearing about the energy wave, and that makes the lights come really, really bright, which they probably wouldn't have noticed if they were on the TNG bridge or the Voyager bridge. Just be like, oh, what was that? It's just a really, I don't know why tonally they chose to keep the lights down low. Also, I noticed with the episodes that there's nothing out the windows. Now, I get that it's a nebula, it's dark, and it's blue. But if you look out the windows, there's nothing there. There's no asteroids, there's no textured clouds. It, to be honest, looks like the windows are closed. In the weird discussion, when I noticed that with Riker and Picard, Riker's talking about how he's doesn't think there's an afterlife. He hasn't seen any evidence for an afterlife, and he doesn't feel very good about it in regards to his son Thad. And you sort of empathize with it, but at the same time, I'm like, didn't his son die like quite a long time ago? It seems like a really sharp turn from Nepenthe, where he was mostly happy, and this episode where he's like, I'm quite down. 7 is investigating the changeling, which once again would be a lot easier if the lights were turned up. Like if you're looking for something, turn the fucking lights in the corridor up. It's a nitpick. It's a nitpick, but my god, it's one of those things I'm just like, this doesn't make... It's just something that bothers me. Sure, Beverly Crusher is counting down the energy pulses coming from the nebula, which we've heard are part biological, which leads up to the end of the episode, but we'll discuss that later. Picard decides to take Jack to 10 forward, a hologram of 10 forward on the Titan, and to get to know him a little bit better. And they're sort of awkward and they jump around things, and it's you can see that Picard's disappointed with the interaction he's having. It's a nice scene. They really fall off each other. I did like the joke about Jack losing his hair. I think, to be honest, I would be worried about that. That was a nice little moment, but there was a lot of disappointment from Picard in regards to the conversation that they were having. So Captain Shaw is now in a leg brace in his room. 7 comes to visit. I have two things. He obviously tells her to go look for a storage thing or a bucket where the changeling would have gone to its liquid state. I'm a bit curious as to why his leg is still braced. I swear in TNG that they could just fix bones and stuff straight away. Like, was this something that happened before? I know this episode seems more critical, but I've written a lot of notes down in regards to just sort of things that I find interesting that they're sort of doing, and I'm like, why is that there? But in terms of Shaw, like Shaw's characterization, like I love how he's nice to 7, and then she sort of goes, well, so that would be you if you were a changeling, not if you were just a fucking asshole, pretty much. Which I really, really liked. I liked that sort of banter. I think there's sort of building up of a respect, which I like. I think Captain Shaw is really good. I think in the beginning he was a bit of a dick, but you sort of get where he's coming from now. Riker tries to message Deanna Troi, but he can't get the words out because obviously they're going through something, which we'll, I imagine, find out about later. It's an interesting scene. It doesn't really go anywhere until later. Then we get to the big reveal of Vadic and who she might be, which is she takes a knife to her and cuts off a bit of herself because she's a changeling. Which I was, to be honest, a little bit disappointed by. I don't want the enemy of the whole season being the changelings. I thought maybe it'd be like a collective of enemies. It's interesting to see how they're going to get Moriarty and Law into it now. I certainly think like it took away a little bit from Vadic's character that she was a changeling. She's obviously a batshit crazy change, but it was good to see, and the graphics for the changeling are really good. A bit meatier than I thought, and they were different than what they were in Discovery as well, which was interesting to look at. There's another scene where Shaw goes into the holodeck with Picard and says that he was at Wolf 359, where Picard became Locutus of Borg. He talks about the story of how he was chosen out of a certain group of people to survive, and I get why that character point's in there. I don't see why it had to be there. Bringing up Locutus seems to be what they want to do with every season. It's like they felt like it wasn't dealt with enough. And it's a really confusing thing, because after First Contact, you see that there's still a lot of skepticism around him. But that was only about 6 or 7 years after he was Locutus. This is 20, almost 30 years after he was Locutus, and it seems really weird to keep dredging up this character point, unless it's relevant in the future. But it explained Shaw's sort of dislike of him, but at the same time, it just felt like, oh, let's tack this in there. Once again, one of those references that Picard Season 3 has come up with, where they there's a reference for the sake of a reference, and it's a bit weird. But the point of that conversation wasn't anything to do with Wolf 359. It was to point out that Shaw had been a grease monkey or an engineer back then, and he could get his hands dirty. So the rest of the episode, they're trying to find this changeling, and then eventually they have to open up the engines to fill them. So they're going to surf their way out. So they open up the engines to basically force the energy inside to jumpstart the Titan, which is, we've seen it done before, I think, in a few other Star Trek episodes. Seven and Shaw go down, and they're opening the sides of the nacelles manually, and then Lieutenant LaForge, or Ensign LaForge, comes in, and Seven discovers that she's not actually her, it's the changeling, because she says Commander Hanson instead of Commander Seven. And I didn't mind that. I do like the way that obviously they've planned out this plot, and they've planned out plot points beyond the first episode. It's very clear that they've planned out these points. But I just feel like if they could just tone down on the references to everything else, I get it. There was no Raffi or Worf in this. And that was okay. I didn't mind it. I was just a bit like, okay, they've dropped that for this episode. Maybe we'll get a full Raffi Worf episode. So in my review, I neglected to mention that in the Jack Crush scenes with Picard, we find out at the end that Jack actually went and did try and talk to Picard, and he was at 10 Forward when Picard was eating from the beginning of the episode. It's a callback. And that scene was really, really good. That made that whole 5-year leap forward at the beginning make sense in terms of what they were trying to tell. Jack comes across as somebody who doesn't want connection, and then we see by that flashback that he did want that connection. And that is probably the best emotional beat of the episode. This certainly feels like these 3 episodes are like a first act of a plot. So if you were doing a movie that's 3 acts, this is the first act. The second act is sort of finding out what's going on, investigating. Third act is your climax. I really enjoyed this episode, as well as understanding that it's kind of a bit of filler, because it's like they don't really try to do anything till the very end. They're going to surf their way out. They obviously survive. Riker does a really cool maneuver that was done on him by Vadic, which is throw an asteroid at the ship because it doesn't have its portal weapon. It's fine. It gets knocked out of the way, and the Titan basically escapes. And then they see space jellyfish. which is a nice nod to things like Farpoint, and they do mention Farpoint in this episode, in that you got the space jellyfish, and they're always there. I don't know why it's always space sea creatures. It's really weird. But it was a nice little sort of seeing that birth, and seeing obviously Riker goes and he speaks to Troy, and there's that feeling of exploration and how amazing the universe is that they all sort of get back, which I really liked. I wish that it was a bit more the focus of the episode than let's just get these characters in a room. Otherwise, it was a good episode. I'm looking forward to next week. What did you think about this season's episode 4? Make sure to write in the comments, subscribe, like, comment, and share. Sorry this video was too late. It was late, but Thursday I will be back, Thursday Australia time, I will be back with a new episode or new review for Star Trek Picard episode 5. Have a great day.